In 1950, a large commercial airplane carrying dozens of passengers suddenly disappeared while flying over the ocean. There was no distress call, no wreckage, no emergency signal. It was as if the plane had simply vanished from existence. Even after decades of searching, no one has ever found a clear explanation. And this is far from the only case. Throughout history, there have been many mysterious disappearances that remain unsolved to this day. People who vanish without a trace. Entire groups that disappeared in the wilderness. Even aircraft and ships that simply vanished without explanation. Today, we are going to explore some of the strangest disappearances ever recorded. Some of these cases are disturbing. Others are simply baffling. And all of them leave us with one haunting question. What really happened? Case 1. The disappearance of D.B. Cooper. In November 1971, a man using the name D.B. Cooper boarded a commercial flight traveling from Portland to Seattle in the United States. At first, nothing seemed unusual. He was described as a calm, well-dressed man wearing a suit and sunglasses. But shortly after the plane took off, he handed a note to a flight attendant. The message was simple and terrifying. The note said that he had a bomb. Cooper demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. Authorities decided to cooperate in order to protect the passengers. When the plane landed in Seattle, the money and parachutes were delivered. Cooper released the passengers. But the story was far from over. He ordered the pilots to take off again and fly toward Mexico. Somewhere over the dark forests of Washington state, Cooper opened the rear staircase of the aircraft. Then he jumped out of the plane into the night. He was never seen again. Despite one of the largest investigations in FBI history, investigators were never able to find him. No body was discovered. No clear evidence was found. Only a small portion of the ransom money was discovered years later near a riverbank. To this day, no one knows who D.B. Cooper really was, or whether he survived the jump. Case 2. The Sodder Children. One of the most disturbing disappearance cases happened on Christmas Eve in 1945. The Sodder family lived in West Virginia. That night, a fire broke out in their home while the family was sleeping. The parents and 4 of their children managed to escape. But 5 of the children were believed to have died inside the burning house. However, something strange happened during the investigation. After the fire was extinguished, investigators searched the ruins. Normally, even in intense fires, human remains can still be found. But in this case, no bones were discovered. Not a single trace of the 5 children. Over time, several witnesses claimed to have seen the children alive after the fire. One woman said she saw them in a passing car on the night of the fire. Another claimed to have seen them years later in another state. The Sodder parents became convinced that their children had been kidnapped. They spent the rest of their lives searching for answers. But the truth behind the disappearance of the Sodder children remains a mystery. Case 3. The Lost Colony of Roanoke. One of the oldest and most famous disappearance mysteries dates back more than 400 years. In the late 1500s, English settlers established a colony on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina. Around 115 colonists lived there. But the colony struggled to survive. Eventually, the colony's governor, John White, sailed back to England to gather supplies. Unfortunately, war delayed his return for several years. When he finally came back to Roanoke in 1590, he expected to find the colony waiting for him. Instead, he found something deeply unsettling. The entire settlement had been abandoned. Every house was empty. There were no signs of violence. No bodies. No remains. The only clue was a single word carved into a wooden post. The word was Croton. To this day, Historians are still unsure what happened to the settlers. Some believe they joined a nearby Native American tribe. Others believe something far more tragic occurred. But the truth has never been fully discovered. Case 4, Flight 19. One of the most famous aviation disappearances happened in 1945. 5 U.S. Navy training planes took off from Florida for a routine mission. The group of planes was known as Flight 19. The weather was clear when they began their flight. But shortly after reaching their destination, something strange happened. The flight leader reported that his compass was malfunctioning. He also said the ocean below looked unusual. Soon after that, the pilots began to sound confused. Radio recordings captured their final conversations. They seemed unable to determine their location. As the situation grew worse, the planes eventually ran out of fuel. One by one, they disappeared. A rescue aircraft was sent to search for them. But incredibly, that aircraft also vanished. Despite a massive search operation, no wreckage was ever found. The disappearance of Flight 19 later became one of the most famous mysteries connected to the so-called Bermuda Triangle. Even today, investigators cannot fully explain what happened. Case 5. The disappearance of Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was one of the most famous pilots in history. In 1937, she attempted to become the first woman to fly around the world. She and her navigator flew across thousands of miles of ocean. But during the final part of the journey, something went terribly wrong. Their plane disappeared somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Radio transmissions suggested they were running low on fuel. But after that, the signal stopped. A massive search operation began. The U.S. Navy spent millions of dollars trying to locate the aircraft. But no confirmed wreckage was ever found. Over the years, many theories have appeared. Some believe the plane crashed into the ocean. Others think she may have landed on a remote island. But despite decades of investigation, the mystery of Amelia Earhart's disappearance has never been completely solved. History is filled with mysteries like these. Cases where people simply vanished. Where investigators searched for answers, but found only more questions. Sometimes the truth may be hidden by time. Sometimes evidence disappears. And sometimes, the mystery may never be solved. But one thing is certain. There are still many secrets in our world waiting to be discovered. And perhaps the strangest disappearances in history are the ones we still don't understand.